Hello, humans, and welcome back to another episode of the worst podcast ever. And to substantiate that claim, we have Life of a Reseller. How are you today, Blake?
I'm good, Octo. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. As you may have seen, Grumpy Granny is still recovering from her makeup incident. So, we have Blake filling her into her for today. We've also got a special guest, Blake. We've dragged someone in. We've been able to snatch one of the two Aussie thrifters. So hopefully it's the exciting one. Hopefully it's Jazz, because we need all the help we can get with the subscriber count.
Yeah, I hope so. It'll be a bit bland if it's not Jazz. I reckon it's. Yeah.
Well, that's right. Well, it could be anyone.
She's the better half.
Well, that's right. Yeah, we'll see how we go. But how's your weekend been so far?
Pretty good. Yeah, it's been okay. It's been slow, but it's been okay. It's just business as usual over here. Yeah.
No, well, I was just mentioning in the back room that I had a supposed scammer from the international market, and turned out that I was the one that screwed up. So just don't jump to a conclusion straight off the bat. That was the highlight of my weekend so far, and going a bit of a sparring match with a gentleman in Switzerland, and finding out 15 minutes after we had swipes at each other that I kind of stuffed up. So, being a very humble octopus, I'll blame someone else and send out your product you're supposed to get. So.
Well, you're not going to get world domination if you're a nice guy.
Well, that's exactly right. I'm going to blame Grumpy Granny if I can get away with it. Hopefully, she doesn't watch this episode.
Exactly. Just say that she shipped the order out for you.
Well, that's exactly right. Well, he doesn't know who Grumpy Granny is, so I'll just say, whinge about her till the cows come home.
Yeah.
But I suppose we better bring Jazz on and get onto our topic of today, which is Poshmark and Plan B, I suppose, and we'll just evolve the conversation from there. So give me 2 seconds, and I'll bring her on. Oh no, it's the other one. Oh.
Sorry, lads. Jazz was here, but she heard you creeping on her, so she ran away and dragged me in.
Oh no, jeez, we got the boring one. What's this?
Oh god, I don't know. You'll have to stop watching now, everyone.
I'll have to do my hair and makeup, and I might pass halfway through.
I was about to say, mate, with your beard, you probably passed as Grumpy Granny at the moment.
I'm disappointed because two things. I come on here and Grumpy Granny isn't here. The first one I've been on. And secondly, you drag me on to talk about Poshmark. So, I mean... I
know. Well, that's right. Rumours on the street, they tried to seduce you when they first came out.
I wish they tried to seduce me. They didn't give me a cent to make any of those videos. But it's definitely disappointing for Australia and the other countries that have been left out in the breeze. But I guess we'll get into that shortly.
Yeah. So Poshmark would just be, I suppose, the surface skimmer. But I want to really talk about Plan B and obviously what happens, if things go awry like we have found with Poshmark. So obviously Blake has his side hustles and Brad has his side hustles and I have my world domination side hustle. So we have multiple sources of income coming in. So that's something we need to be mindful of. Oh no, that damn robot's back. Grumpy Granny's not here to remind me to turn it off. This is what happens when she goes on leave. Can't take her anyway.
Just a brief roll without her here.
Well, that's right. That's exactly. It's organised chaos. It's great. It's like herding cats. But speaking of which, how's your cat going, Brad? I haven't seen it for a while.
The two of them are slowly working each other out, but they don't get on the videos anymore because we're not really filming that at home anymore. But all right, it's still running.
I'm a bit like Alf the alien. I have an affinity towards cats. I always wonder what they tasted like, so I have to ask him if I've ever come across.
Not good.
I'm sure there's a joke there, but I'm just going to leave it alone.
But you two probably aren't old enough to remember Alf, like the TV show. You know who Alf is, obviously, but you wouldn't remember.
Very, very vaguely. I think I caught a few episodes in the back end, but I haven't watched it all the way through. So.
Yeah. So before I get obviously reported to Peter and all the other Emerald activist groups come after me by the 90s and 2000 kids, Alf was one of the plot points was that you wanted to eat the house cat. So please don't. Please redirect all your anger to Life of a Reseller if you've got any. Just go to his channel and destroy that channel.
Or some poor fella in Switzerland.
Well, that's right. Well, I've already destroyed his weekend. So, well, that's right. He was gonna. He did tell me in the messages he was gonna make the octopus famous or infamous, but I don't know. Well, maybe he's working on my side. I don't know. It might be a Google translation error. So,
he might be promoting you over there as part of the combination tour.
Well, that's exactly right. Maybe, yeah, he doesn't know how things work, but I don't know, sure. But how's your week been, Brad?
Yeah, not too bad. Cruising along the warehouse, starting to think about these Christmas sales and what we need to do. But yes, things have been ticking along pretty steadily for the last month or so, I'd say. Sales have been pretty steady, apart from a couple of days here and there. But yeah, things going well, keeping busy, and yeah, I think we've just got through all that a lot of camping gear that we had come through. So now we're looking for the next big deal.
Yeah. So what you've listed, or is it? I've seen that it's been selling on Instagram, but
Yeah, it's all listed and selling through quite well. We've made our money back on it now, which is nice. So everything from here on out is profit, which is good. But yeah, we still got quite a lot of items. I think there was like 3,500 individual items that went up. So and there's some like duplicates and multiples in those listings as well. So yeah, it will take a while to sell through, but when you're in the green a couple of months, well, probably 3 months after, you're pretty happy. So.
Yeah, and that's
turnaround for
right.
you.
Yeah, well, that's good.
Yeah, we smash through it pretty quickly. It's nice when you have new stock like that because it is a lot easier to list, and we just stole MacPack's sizing charts. So we didn't have to worry about measurements. But yeah, it was all pretty clean. So
yeah. just don't use their stock photos. I've made that mistake before, I think.
Don't do that.
Yeah. So long story short, for those playing at home, I used Build-A-Bear's stock photos for a couple of their plush toys, and yeah, they came after me twice with Vero. So I strongly advise against that. But
do you think they would have made a Build-A-Bear octopus? You might be able to hook that up.
Well, that's right. Well, I'm always looking at expanding. Yeah, a lot of the American YouTubers seem to have plushes, so I'm thinking, well, I could just go to the bargain bin and pick up all those reversible octopuses, and I'll laugh. Pre-made.
Yeah, just slap your logo on it and game over.
Well, that's right. Well, I don't know about you guys, but when I come across them in our local op shops up here, they're like $8 each, and they're like $2 brand new from Kmart.
They put up the price of them. I don't know why they think they're valuable, but
we've got one in the warehouse that was hanging around our little goal board, and if we didn't hit our goal, it was red, and then if it was hit our goal, it was yellow. So I mean, it's got multi-purpose, really.
Well, that's exactly right. Yeah, I find it very annoying that everyone defaults it to the happy face. So if I do come across them in the thrift stores or the op shops, I always reverse them over. So make sure that let them know that I've been in, as if they haven't already seen like an 8-foot octopus slithering through. So yeah, but I did see that.
I got one in my bedroom, and it's always on the angry thing, and it looks exactly like you, so it's quite disturbing.
I'm going to leave that alone. I don't even want to be in your bedroom looking angry. I think you got me mixed up for Diary of a Flipper, mate. You might have to reach out to him for his octopuses. Yeah, so I seen that you released a garage sale video on Friday, Brett. How are you finding the garage sales? I know you're doing the garage sale trial next week.
Yeah, we're on with them next Saturday, 28th. So yeah, there's like a little bit of a chat that they're doing, talking about selling secondhand. So that'll be pretty fun. Us and a couple other people from around the community are jumping on it, and so good diversity there, which is cool. But yeah, we've been enjoying the garage sale videos. Like, it's part of what we're doing on the weekend, so it's just nice for us to be able to film it as well. I can't say that it's been helping the channel at all, but I mean, YouTube's always been second for us and reselling's been first. So we just try to fit our videos in around what we're doing. So if you guys have been enjoying it, awesome. But if not, I'm probably not going to change them anytime soon while they're still around. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good. It's something that, like I was saying behind the scenes in the green room, is that I've never really got out to garage sales. I always think that they try and put me on the barbecue. So that's something.
Yeah, it's definitely a struggle. Like, obviously, we try and keep our weekend like eBay free, apart from answering offers and stuff, and that it kind of like eats into the weekend when you're up at 6 to go to garage sales. But I mean, they've been paying off really well the last sort of few weeks, and this is the time of year that are actually ongoing here because winter's just way too cold. So. We try and enjoy them while they're around, and hopefully we get a good 6-month run out of them. And yeah, we'll probably transition between garage sales and normal videos here and there, but while they're out and about, and we're finding some cool stuff to share with you guys, and hopefully along the way you guys see something that we pick up that you can pick up yourself as well, because it's fun to get out and chat to people as well. So.
Well, that's right. And I think one of your videos, probably would have been 12 months ago now, that I drop shipped from you from a Nintendo controller, the original
Yeah,
Nintendo controller. I think it was in one of your garage sale videos, actually, like from memory.
Probably, yeah. I don't remember where we picked that one up from, but I did notice the disgruntled octopus name come through the sold. And I mean, if people can do that, I'm more than happy for them to jump on this.
Yeah, and I know other people have actually mentioned that in previous videos as well. Is that I think that, you know, if you've got something that's broken or you've sold it or something along the lines of that, if you can source it relatively cheaply and, you know, have it sent to the customer, you're probably going to do yourself a favor. Obviously, buy from a reputable seller. You know, don't buy from Blake and he's, you know, he's random octopuses in the bedroom. But you know,
I think a few of us have done it before. Like, you know, Jada will message me. He's like, "Oh, do you still have this?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Can you send it to me?" But yeah, like, it's good to have a community like that because you can reach out to people that you know might have similar stuff and get a bit of hand when you need it. If you want to complete a set that you don't quite have or something that goes missing or awry, you can always try and fix it pretty quickly.
Yeah, and it always helps, you know, if you know that someone's in that area. Because, excuse me, the controller that I had was in the Adelaide, South Australia area. So
there you go.
by the time that I think you had 2-day handling time from memory, but they would have lined up from where it would
next day would have been. Yeah, we always got
one. It would have lined up with the timelines from Bermuda anyway. So it worked out well. Yeah, no, it's good. What was I going to say? And that's on the topic of garage sales, because obviously I'm infatuated by this. How do you find people react to having a GoPro on?
Pretty good, to be honest. Like, we've only had a couple people ask, and then once we just tell them what we do, they're like, "Oh yeah, that's really cool." We got a subscriber from it the other week. The lovely lady was chatting to us about it. I've only had probably 1 or 2 people that were a little bit like, "Oh, that's weird." Actually, when I went to the market a few weeks ago, collector market, one of the guys was like, "Oh, I was on your video at the garage sale the other week," and I was like, "Oh, really?" But once we started chatting to them, like, it's generally fine. And if people don't want to be on camera, like, we'll just turn it off or cut it. And yeah, like, I don't know. I think most people are either they don't notice it or they just don't really care. And we're always pretty friendly. It's not like we're, you know, sneaking around and being shady about it and trying to, like, it doesn't look like we're there filming their place so we can break in later or anything like that. I think most people are pretty calm.
Well, lucky you got glasses on, mate, because that probably just nullifies the beard a little bit. Because obviously, if you rocked up with no glasses on and just the beard, you'd be like, "Oh, this looks a bit."
If I took the hat off as well, there's not much hair under here anymore, so I might look a little bit more sketchy. But yeah, I mean, they're pretty chill. I mean, yeah, if we ever had a problem, we just wouldn't film there. So we try to be respectful and friendly when we're out there. And yesterday when we went to a deceased estate sale, and I almost didn't film, but when we started talking to the lady, she was like, you know, quite nice, and she obviously knew that what we're doing. So yeah, I think as long as you're being respectful, it definitely comes with nerves when you're first doing it because you don't want that negative reaction. But so far, touch wood, nothing too bad. A couple of people wanted to be in the thumbnail or the video, so yeah, pretty chill.
Yeah, I got to try and figure out where I'm going to do with your 2 heads on my thumbnail, because obviously the contract states that I've got to be 3/4 or 4/5 the thumbnail just for me. So
my head's pretty big. So
I was about to say that. Yeah, it's going to be hard enough just shrinking it down as it is. So
yeah.
And, I was about to say we could just have a contest with the worst facial hair, but I think Blake takes it out in that category. So
Woo!
So you got a little bit of grey coming. So you got a little grey coming through your beard there, Brad. Like, you get a bit.
That's what eBay does to you, mate. Like, 18 years old with greys. No, just kidding. I think 33, and it shows pretty well.
I was about to say, well, I just had my 88th birthday yesterday, and there's no grey hair here. So look at that.
No, not at all, mate. I might have to get some octopus. I don't know. I was going to say.
I was about to say, finish that sentence, and you'll end up with like Blake in the back room.
Yeah. I was hoping you were going to say it, so it was just me saying weird shit.
Get some octopus collagen. There we go.
Yeah, collagen or clone. I'll send you a sample of the ink. So I suppose we better get into the topic. Yeah, well, that's right. Well, that's exactly right. Yeah, well, it's black, so it's not healthy, but each to their own. I suppose we better get on to this week's topic. We're about a quarter way through the episode, so nothing like a slow burn at the start. To help with the retention rate. So we're going to talk a little bit about Poshmark quickly. Yeah, so basically, Blake brought to our attention because was it on Friday, Blake, that they sent an email out saying that they're closing within the week?
Yeah, I think it was Friday. Yep. They sent out the email. I don't even think I got the email. I looked through my thing. I couldn't find the email anywhere. I just got the notification in the app.
I think I saw
red
it on Instagram. That's where I saw it, I think. So.
Yeah, I saw it on Instagram too. But I was just going to Poshmark in the morning and see this big red banner on the top saying, "We're closing." I'm like, huh? No one told me anything about this. Like, it's just out of the blue.
Yeah. So, and I suppose that, like I found out, I think maybe actually, I think I sent it to you, Blake, that like an email or something that I got from them directly. I've flicked it to you because I think you're the only Poshmark seller in Australia that's probably, A, affected by this, and B, still on the platform.
Yeah.
but I suppose that it is quite poor in that regard that, you've been given, 4 or 5 days notice. And even when I was reading through the email, you've had a certain period of time to withdraw your funds, or I assume that you lose them from the way that was written. So
I think it's like,
so if you're
first of November, like that's a week. Like
first of November,
right.
and like sometimes, with the shipping from Sendle and that, like it might take 2 or 3 weeks for you to get it. I've still got orders out there, $50, $60 pair of jeans with my funds pending. And, that some of them were in Western Australia. So they might not get there on time. And I don't know what happens after that. I think I read somewhere that you can contact support and they'll try and help you out. But I mean, that doesn't really mean much.
Lose your $70 in wasted time, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think
wasted time and the money in the item. Like,
Yeah, because when I was reading, and what we mentioned in the green room is that, because I'm a very diligent octopus, and I spent 30 seconds before we started filming researching, and and I went on because like, for all transparency's sake, I've never used Poshmark as a seller or a buyer. I've used Depop a couple of times on the recommendation of Diary of a Flipper. Got a couple of good shirts for myself. Funds that already have the holes put in them, so I can put my tentacles through. But on their website, there's no mention of them closing at all. Like, it still has a process of signing up, and as a buyer, as a seller, and all these different things. I went through their press releases. There was nothing there. It wasn't until I slithered over to Instagram that like you're saying, Blake, was that there's like a CEO like notice saying that they're withdrawing from the UK, India, and Australian markets in the next week. So it's quite a bit of a culture shock, because I think you did a bit of a short on Friday as well, Blake, saying that you lost about $1,500 a month. So
yeah. So like it's a decent amount of money. That's just like, it was almost like a side hustle to my main eBay business. But $1,500 in sales a month, like it's a lot of extra money, and that was a way for me to move a lot of the stock as well. Like a lot of my older stock that wasn't selling on eBay did really well on Poshmark. And I was sourcing certain things, like certain styles, for Poshmark. So it's quite difficult. And like I said, they haven't really got much on there. Like, they've still got their Australian referral program active. So you can still, people can still, get signed up for it, and it's going to, turn off in 3 days. Like,
well, that's right.
It's tough.
And I can see by the study of room, mate, you have that eclectic, that fashion sense. So I can see by the minimalistic in the background. Quite like the octopus. I think Brad's showing us up here under here with his collection. I think it might even be a green screen from memory.
I was saying before I come in, it's a bit messy back here at the moment, so it doesn't provide the best backdrop. But I mean, like, for Poshmark, like, I kind of feel sorry for all the people that invest a lot of time into Poshmark, and there'd be a lot of people that Poshmark was their like total income, like, especially if you're doing clothing, and that kind of posh brand that they had really suited some people, like influencers and stuff like that, where they could sell off their clothing on that site. So I think it's a big surprise to people in terms of how quickly it happened. But for me, it's probably not a big surprise that it has happened. But I guess that's something we can talk about in a second. But it's definitely happened real quick, and I hope everyone can rebound from it. Because I mean, $1,500, that's significant over a month. That's right. And now you've got to try and either make that up on eBay or somewhere else to keep things flowing. So
that's right, and that's on average too. Like some weeks it'd be obviously worse, but some weeks do better than eBay for me. Like there's just it's inconsistent like that. But that's it'd be on average. But I think I said in my video, like it works out to be 18 grand a year, which is a lot of money you've got to make up elsewhere. Yeah. So it's definitely tough. But there's a lot, as you said, there's a lot of people that have built their whole business on the back of Poshmark. The whole style, their photo setups and everything. And then they get 5 days to somehow try and keep alive, Yeah.
I was going to say, you looking at your noggin, mate. You're halfway there to open up an OnlyFans account. Well, you just get some 70s music and off you go.
I might have to. I can't sell a Poshmark now, so I've got to make it somehow.
you gotta do what you gotta do. I mean,
that's right.
Yeah, exactly. If there's any interest in that, leave it down in the comments below.
His opening plan starts at $18 a year, so reach out if you want to help him from there. He only just needs 1,000 subscribers and off he goes.
Exactly.
Yeah, but it's just. And what's your thoughts, Brad, as to why it closed? Like I said, I really haven't delved into it. It was probably something I was going to touch on in the next 6 to 12 months.
I think realistically, it was probably kind of doomed from the start. Like, in terms of the way that they brought it into Australia, like obviously I don't know the UK market, and I don't know the Indian market. I know the UK market only happened recently, so they would have invested quite a lot of money there, and obviously that's going to be a loss to them. But in terms of like key factors, I think there's quite a few there. I think one of the main ones here in Australia was they lost a lot of people early on by just using Sendle. They kind of alienated half of Australia with that. Like people couldn't use it in regional Australia. I know they've kind of changed that a little bit recently, but I think Poshmark is a very American style company, and I kind of have the same fear for Whatnot if it comes to Australia, that Australians are very different in the way we react. Obviously, we're still, similar to America, but I think we take a lot longer to adjust and take on new things like Poshmark and Whatnot. And obviously the size of Australia, like I think America is like 331 million people and there's like 26 million here. So the market size is a huge one. The size of Australia in terms of logistics is a huge one. But yeah, I think there's multiple reasons it hasn't really worked. And obviously they wanted to test the market and see if it was going to work. But I think they would have either been making very minimal money or losing money in the Australian market. And that obviously long-term doesn't make sense for their business. So yeah, I don't know if you guys agree with any of those or disagree. But yeah, I think that's probably the 3 or 4 I can think off the top of my head.
Yeah, and I suppose I would like to know where it falls into the UK and Indian tax year, because I think that would be a contributing factor when they actually pulled out of the market as well. Because obviously we're closed off on the 30th or the 30th of June, so there might be something in the UK, it might be a calendar year or something along to that. So they're obviously writing it off as a loss when they withdraw. So,
what about you, Blake? US based anyway, because so it'd be US tax bracket, I'd suggest, which would be end of year. So.
Yeah. Well, I agree with everything you said. Like I can tell you right now, if I couldn't, the only reason I did Poshmark is because the couriers would come and pick it up from my house. If I had to go and drop them off myself through Sendle, that's a complete detour from where my main Australia post is. I wouldn't have used them. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, and like some people didn't even have, like, they can't even access Sendle from where they are, like, let alone having to go somewhere else. They just literally cannot use it.
How good would it be?
Then they have to use Australia Post, which then is going to obviously come out of their pocket a bit more as well, because it's more expensive.
At the original, you couldn't even use Australia Post. Like, it was like you use Sendle, that's it. Like, there was no alternative. So it was, I mean, that straight off the bat, just that kills, I don't know, 20% of your market before you even start, probably more than that.
That's right. So, well, a lot of Australia is regional. And we're a pretty rural thing. And also, like, as part of what you said, like, it is more of an American thing. And like, I haven't been to America, so I don't know their culture, but for the majority of Australians, the whole posh, fancy side of what they're trying to promote doesn't really fit into what most Australians are like. Like, we're not like that. We're just like, oh yeah, get me item, I don't care. Like, it's sort of
I think we're very much more laid back in terms of, like, we don't have that sort of fanfare that America kind of has around, influencers and people with some sort of following. Like, that's what a lot of the Whatnot people are kind of living off of now, is people coming to them and buying off them for the sake of having that attachment to the person that's selling it.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
Poshmark was kind of designed like that as well. They had all these posh ambassadors and people that were going to, help grow the business. But I think two things: we don't have that sort of fanfare, and Australians just, I don't know, we don't take the things as quickly as Americans. We want to see them like over a long period of time. They grow like a bit of a following. It just doesn't happen overnight, which, yeah, like I said, I think Whatnot, if it comes to Australia, will have a bit of the same problem. I hope it works, but
yeah, and it is it seems to be anyway, relatively influencer based, and really there's not a lot of them in Australia. Like there's really not many influencers and followers and that, like, of that kind of thing in Australia. I just want them to come because I think it'll be like, it might not catch on as popular, so I can use it as a sourcing opportunity. That for me is why I want it here, because I could probably get some really good stuff that I could flip back on eBay.
Yeah,
For
absolutely.
$2 or $3.
I think if we're talking about alternative platforms, like Whatnot would be a great place to source, like you mentioned, because again, the sample size of people that are going to be jumping on those shows are going to be relatively small compared to the US. So if people are starting stuff at 99 cents like they do over there, chances are they're probably not going to get a lot of money for it. So yeah, I don't know. It's that supply and demand as well with Whatnot. Is those people generally have access to stuff like Goodwill bins where they're buying stuff at cents on the dollar, where if we were to go to Op Shop and pay $8 for a pair of shoes and sell them on Whatnot for $4, you're going backwards.
Exactly. And I think part of the appeal of the Whatnot platform is the low starts, and we just don't have the means to source stuff that cheap. Like not for the most part anyway. Like
I mean, there'll be some
difficult.
people that can, but in general,
yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Like I wish we had something like the Goodwill bins here, but we don't. And I don't see it coming anytime soon.
That's something that I like. What Brad just raised there, that was one of the points that I actually had. That the very few times that I've actually written something down is that our thrift store or our op shops, they're pricing incompetitive from Whatnot. So where they start at 99 cents, it's probably not even viable for us to start at $9.99 for it. And people aren't going to come in for those different things. Does that lend to the platform being used by the Salvation Army or Vinnies, all those different things, having their own little live auctions from that perspective? So
I wouldn't be surprised.
I could see a couple taking it on board and trying that. I just think it would be really. I don't think it'd have the same result that it does in America. Even if you were able to source stuff cheaply, I don't see anyone having sort of 20, 30, 40,000 people watching their lives and jumping on a shirt that they could probably pick up themselves for half the price. So I don't know, it'll be interesting. I'd love it too, and I'd love to try it, but I just think we have such a different mentality here in Australia, and it's different.
And it's geared a lot towards sort of a younger generation too. Like you're not going to have 60-year-old men that are looking for a polo shirt head over to a platform like Whatnot. Like they're going to still go to places like eBay, and I don't think it'll catch on like it has over there. But I still want them to bring it over. But
of course,
it'd be interesting to see. Like it might be in another case like Poshmark. It might not last that long.
No, quite honestly, I don't think they'll even bring it to Australia. I'd be surprised if I'm proven otherwise. But for example, I'll use what Brad's got behind him. Those Funko Pops, right? So the Funko Pops are in a decline. They're bleeding money, and the company quite possibly won't exist in 12 to 24 months, right? But a lot of the people on Whatnot source them from Target or from Walmart, like cents on the dollar. And that's how they actually they use that as almost an entry weight, excuse me, into getting into Whatnot. To sell those products. And like Brad was saying earlier, like Goodwood bins and all these different things that they've got access to, that is that we don't have our local department stores reduce Funko Pops to $1 each that we could sell them for $3 or $4 a piece, just to go from there. So it'd be quite curious, and I think it wouldn't last as long as Poshmark. I think you'd have the initial fanfare maybe for about 3 or 4 months, then it'll just disappear into the abyss.
There's a lot of money involved in like bringing something to a new country. Like it's not just like you can flick a switch and it changes. Like you need to employ people in that country and have developers that are going to work on that product to make it work. So it's not just like tomorrow it will show up. It'll be a long process for them to make that happen. Same with Poshmark. So I can't imagine how much money they invested into the Australian, UK, and Indian market, like Poshmark. And now they're like obviously just focusing on the US market because that's where they were doing really well. And I'm assuming that those markets were, probably impacting their bottom line. Like, it's not an easy switch to make that happen.
Yeah. And a place like Whatnot too. Like Poshmark just recently implemented live selling, so Australia's already had a taste of that, and it didn't catch on Poshmark. Like I'd go on there trying to look for a show to maybe go and see if I can find some stuff. There'd be lucky to be one show scheduled for the whole day through all of Australia, and something like that, and seeing the results of what Poshmark got might even scare a platform like Whatnot away from coming over here.
Yeah, well, Poshmark have tested the waters and it didn't really work. So if you're a company and you're looking at, people before you, you're going to look at Poshmark and go, well, that didn't work in Australia. Is our product going to work in Australia? And probably on the side of caution rather than just jumping in.
And I think that it'd be quite curious as to how Poshmark's actually performing in America, because if they're performing really well to the point where they're hemorrhaging money because they've got that much money going around, that wouldn't you almost get to the point where you start pushing it to the further markets like the UK, India, and Australia, just to prop those ones up, because it becomes a tax write-off, right? So it's a loss leader. You're almost going in from that perspective just to see if you can build the market up. And I'm actually quite surprised it didn't take off in the UK, because I thought that if anything, that'd be quite similar to because of the population concentration would be similar to the US. India, I'm not too sure about that market, but I would assume they'd probably do a lot better than Australia, because what you're saying earlier, Blake, is that we're primarily dotted around the coast, and there's a few people in the middle of the country, but that's the extent of it.
Yeah. That's right, and like I'm sort of, I've lost my train of thought. That's good to say it. I forgot.
That's not a first.
Oh, that happened last week too. That's what I was going to say. Yeah, I'm almost thinking that maybe Poshmark in the US and Canada and that, where they're saying they want to put more funds into that, I'm almost thinking they might not be going as well as they want to be, because they're pulling the other markets to put money in there, probably to compete with Whatnot and to compete with those other platforms, Macari, all those other places they've got over there. Like, I'm sure they're going better than they are here, but they're probably seeing these other platforms coming ahead, going really well, and they're having to pull these markets to be able to fund competitive, to be more competitive with them. That's sort of
and obviously there's financial difficulties at the moment in most countries. So if there's a pool of money and Whatnot's taking some of that money, then obviously eBay and Macari and Poshmark are all going to be losing part of that pool of money that's there.
Yeah, for sure.
So naturally over time, I think Poshmark probably had that really big impact in America early on, much like what Whatnot is right now. And then you hit that point of like, you've reached the top and it just kind of, steadily stays or drops off. And, it's probably still marketable there, but it's probably not as big as it was 2-3 years ago when things were booming for them.
Yeah. So what would you say that, I suppose I'm looking primarily from the American side, what would you say their clientele would be personally? Would you say their market would be? Yeah.
It'd be primarily probably early 20s to mid 30s, and probably more skewed to female buyers, because that's the way they promote themselves. Like, the whole posh boss and posh ambassador, they sort of market that more towards women than men. So I'd suggest mostly probably in that demographic, female 18 to 35, maybe a bit older.
And that's what I wanted you to say before I got the fire for it. Is that so? That's what I expect, right? Like, then talking about marketing and advertising in Australia, is that they never really approached, or not that I'm being visible to, is that never really approached that demographic over here and try to launch it from that perspective. Is that you could probably go to universities, go to schooling institutes and say, hey, look, this is this new platform, sell your clothes you don't need anymore and buy new clothes you do, kind of cater towards that people that are quite tech savvy, like from probably year 12, aim it from like a year 12 formal perspective and say, hey, look, why pay full price for a formal dress you're only going to wear once? Buy it on Poshmark and then resell it the next day, kind of thing. Kind of sell it from that demographic and get it from the grassroots up. But by the looks of it, they just threw a whole bunch of money at it, didn't do anything with it, then retreated back to the States by the looks of it, from what my perspective is. So.
Yeah, I'll give them a little bit of credit. When they first sort of came over, they were sort of shipping people around Australia and doing like meetups and stuff to kind of promote it, but they weren't really targeting. They were targeting people that were already selling. So people like us and other people that were in the eBay market and could come across to Poshmark, but they weren't, from what I saw, targeting the buyer and changing the way the market perceives them in Australia, which probably most of the market in Australia didn't even know what Poshmark was, because unless you're a seller in Australia, you're probably not going to know what Poshmark is. Like there's no context to it. So yeah, it's a shame that it happened that way, and that's unfortunately probably going to be the legacy of Poshmark. I mean, they did say there's a chance they'll come back, but I can't see that happening.
No, that's I think that's a stock standard marketing line.
Yeah, and I think that if they do come back, I think a lot of people will be hesitant to go back and sell on them because they've just alienated everyone by giving people 5 days notice to shut down and transfer their business. Like it's not something that people are going to want to go. I know that I won't go back if they come back. I won't head back on there.
This is the last time I show you my notes before the show, Blake, because you just crossed off another one. Is that they basically alienated their consumer base, right? Like you hit the nail straight on the head there, is because who would want to go back to this? That they never really had any definable market, I suppose, because Depop, I really discovered that in the last couple of months, like I said, listening to Judder, but I'd associate it with like kind of a grungy, like vintage. That kind of vintage kind of demographic, and that's only by virtue of having a look on it quite quickly. And when I go to Poshmark, it seems to me be very female orientated, I suppose. Like I wouldn't have associated that, like just the feminine look of the website. Just clicking on it earlier this morning is that being from an 88-year-old male octopus, I wouldn't go further than that. It's like, okay, the target demographic for this website is for females. So
kind you've almost glam factor, like glamorous.
Well, it's in the name, posh.
Yeah,
like,
that's right.
Not a lot of guys are.
Well, no, that's right. And that's nothing, like obviously their marketing's towards that, and that's fine. But like you were saying earlier, is that if America's got 350 people, 300, well, they will have 350. When the octopus comes over, there'll be 350 people. When they have 350 million people, statistically speaking, 50% of that's going to be female. So 175 women. Oh, geez, I'm doing it again. 175 million women. That you could probably survive off that, that image on that marketing stuff. When you've got Australia, like it's one of those another additional hurdles you go through. Because realistically, they could have the feminine website, but have like a boys' room or a boys' club or something along the lines of that, where the guys could go and get there. Always have like a side login where they could actually open up like I suppose a more masculine Poshmark or something along the lines of that. That's potentially could have branched it off from there.
Most of what I sell is men's clothing, so there was, and I do sell like it's probably 20% women's. 80% men's, and most of my sales on Poshmark were the women's clothing. But it's like I guess it sort of goes into something else. But like I've gone over to Depop now because I don't have Poshmark to do. I've only listed I think 250 items, and I've already seen 6 sales over there for all men's stuff. So I think it definitely was probably geared to definitely was geared to women, but like. For someone that sells men's, like there wasn't any place for that really. Like I tried to go and spend my Posh credits that I had before the end of, before the shutdown, and I'm just like, what am I going to buy? Like I wanted to buy some stuff for myself, but there just wasn't much on there. Like for a guy.
Yeah, so. And do you find that a lot of Poshmark sellers have withdrawn their stock now? Because realistically, like we were saying earlier, if you've only got a certain period of time to reclaim your credits, and from my understanding, from that 30 seconds of research that I did before, pressing the record button, was that the item has to be delivered before the funds are released. So like you're saying, Blake, is that if you've got something that's on its way to Western Australia from Ballarat, which is in Victoria, on the other side of the country, you're looking potentially 2 or 3 weeks before that's delivered through the world's worst courier company.
100%.
Then what happens then? Well,
the moment I got the news and I saw that you had to have funds withdraw, I delisted and set all of my stock not for sale. And that was, over 1,000 items I just withdrew from the marketplace completely. And
you're not going to be the only one. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. No,
I'd
not
say
at all.
that'd be
Like,
the
but
90% rule. Yeah.
yeah, and there's a lot of people clearing out. Like, I had a lot of things that I'd liked, just hit the heart button on or whatever. And as soon as the news came through, I got notification after notification. You've received like a 50% offer on this item. And that, like, people are just trying to clear out what they can. And that, but even if they do, like, it's not going to get to me in 5 days using Sendle. So they're not going to get their money. Right. And it's, or, a week. So it's just, they've done it really, really poorly.
Because, from the limited information that I've done research, right? So from just by virtue of that message that went out saying that, the Poshmark will, reach out to the customer support team because they'll assist after that close down. I dare say that the Australian call center, if there is one, or Australian workers will probably have their employment terminated on the 5th of November or the 1st of November, whatever the date was, I can't remember. Then you'll be redirected to their call center overseas. And by looking at the current job vacancies, there's a lot in a certain country where a lot of people, eBay and a lot of those people, offshore too. So quite possibly you'd be dealing with, communication breakdown, new employees that haven't obviously worked for Poshmark or don't know that processes are that long. So it's going to be a long and drawn out process to get your funds available, unless they just, pocket the cash and say, hey, look, you've got these 4 items in transit. We're just going to release them and hope for the best that they're fine. So they might just, make it, clean cut from that perspective. But, but going back to what you're saying, Blake, with a 50% off coupon, that kind of, leads into a segue into our next topic, is that by the sound, these people don't have a plan B. That by the sounds of it, they're only selling primarily on Poshmark. If they had their stuff cross-listed, like you're saying, to Depop or eBay, they could be potentially selling on those platforms as well. But to be sending 50% offers to try and recoup money and dealing with a courier company that takes 3 weeks longer than Australia Post.
It's scary. I'm genuinely scared for those people. Because if they've built their whole business on there, even if it's their primary thing, like, I know that, like, if it was on the other hand and eBay shut down but Poshmark was still there, like, I'd be terrified. Like, you'd make it work, but I'd be terrified because that's my main platform. But for those people that have Poshmark as their main platform, like, what are they doing now?
I've always associated.
It's scary.
I've always associated Poshmark with Avon or those multi-level marketing schemes where just by virtue of having to share your closet over and over and over again, it's almost like like you were saying earlier, Brad, is having the Posh ambassadors and all these different things. To me, kind of seems like a little bit of a pyramid scheme from from that perspective. So, it probably I know it's not, but it just gives that vibe. Those different, like, almost like a cult, like. Those different things that especially when they run in the US. But I do want to touch on Plan B. Like what Blake was saying. Poshmark gave their people, or their buyers and sellers 4 or 5 days notice. What would happen if eBay did the same thing? Like 3/4 of the people on YouTube in Australia were in the same boat. And
keep going.
I was going to say it could potentially happen one day. That I don't think eBay is going to be here forever. And like what we've got, Gumtree, which was bought out by eBay, I believe.
Yeah.
But
that's probably the only reason they're still around.
Well, the thing is, I think eBay probably bought them out just to terminate them because Gumtree was our very, very, very watered down Craigslist for a little bit. So you could go on there and get stabbed and get mugged and do all those different fun things that they do in the US. But like I was saying, is that what happens if eBay does falls over all these different things? You've really only got Depop to go from there. You lost all these different things, and realistically, when one company falls over, Poshmark, for example, that it could be potentially eBay executives in the US could be turning around and saying, "Well, is Australia a viable market for eBay as a platform?" If we're with the amount of stuff that's happened previously on eBay and the amount of negative backlash they're getting from the YouTubers in the States, it could potentially happen.
Yeah, I'd like to think eBay is probably a little bit more ingrained in Australian society, a little bit, in terms of like it's been around for a long time. Not everyone knows what it is, but you've probably heard of what it is. Whereas Poshmark was kind of a little bit more niche, if you want to put it that way.
Probably too niche.
I have seen eBay putting out a few more ads and stuff more recently. So I mean, we obviously don't know what the future is, but if eBay ever left, there'd be a whole world of people in a lot of hurt. So yeah, I mean, I can't really say I have a strong plan B for eBay right now. Like, I mean, you could try Amazon Australia, and obviously your market's limited there because they only accept certain stuff and certain pre-owned items, not very many at all in Australia. So for resellers, I guess your only option would be Facebook Marketplace in terms of viability. And we all know what that can be like at times. So I can't say if eBay sent me an email tomorrow that within a week I'd be able to flip my store and go, no worries, because I mean, eBay has the market in Australia. So someone would have to come along and pick that up pretty quickly for it to make people be able to survive reselling.
Well, that's right. And when you think of it, it's quite a scary proposition, because I can guarantee you, like 90% of the people on here just take eBay for granted, or take their platforms, and quite possibly they did for Poshmark as well. Is that they're just taking it for granted that they're just going to plod along, get their $1,500 a month, like Blake was saying. That without any, and like you were saying, Brad, was that Amazon is nowhere near as ingrained or as open as it is in the States. Facebook Marketplace is the same. We don't have a system that we can ship out parcels to people in across the country and all those different things like they do in the States either. So it's going to be a very, very big gap, and you'd have to be very, very, very agile to turn the ship around. Like you said, in the space of the week. I dare say that if it did happen, eBay would probably give you a bit of a maybe 3 months notice or something along those lines.
You'd hope, but you'd expect the same from Poshmark, though, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
the amount of sellers on there, you'd expect more than 5 days. You'd expect at least a month. Even their employees didn't get that. They got the same amount of notice as we did.
And if you flip it and you were put yourself in the position as a Poshmark seller, and like say my whole business was Poshmark, like it is eBay right now, I'd be livid, and I would also be very scared for what my future holds. Like, it's tough economic times. It's really hard to get housing if you're not already in housing. It's not a great time to be looking for higher paid employment, because a lot of companies are, cutting down what they're spending because of that. So a lot of people probably are using Poshmark as either a side hustle or a full-time gig to pay those bills. So now you're going to have all these people that were relying on Poshmark as a platform to make some money to help pay their bills that won't have that now. So it is a scary proposition, and I really hope that those people are able to find ways to make it work. And a lot of people might be selling off their stock to make things ends meet for the next couple of months. So I mean, that floods the market again. So there's all these like flow-on effects from just this one decision that probably doesn't really get into a thought pattern until it actually happens.
And then that's this is the last time I share my notes with either of you, because and that's something that I wanted to touch base on as well. Is that, do you think that, and granted, obviously I probably over-exaggerated Poshmark's size in Australia, but I've got genuine concerns for Sendle now, that not from eBay obviously uses it as well, but a lot of their that they're primarily in a contract with Sendle, so potentially they'll be looking at downsizing, or the courier companies that they use for that excess postage capability, they can potentially push their prices up as well. So will you find that now that they don't have that extra leverage, that their prices will start creeping up on eBay as well? Because they're already competitive with Australia Post, but when they first launched in the market probably about 5 years ago, that they're almost half the price of Australia Post, so they're more viable. And actually it was almost worse risk taking the punt for your item not to get there, because it was half the price. But now when it's almost 1-for-1 for Australia Post, why would you use Sendle over Australia Post? Because it's just horrendous across the board.
I think there's potential that they'll drop a bit. I think they're probably partially protected because of the way they're set up, where they use like Aramax and all these other. They're almost like a third party to all those places.
Yeah,
they're just kind of like a front-facing platform that uses all these parties to ship things. So you might find like an Aramax or someone like that might drop off the radar, but I don't necessarily think Sendle themselves will drop off the radar, because they'll just be able to pick up the new person that comes on board.
But I suppose their buying power is not as as attractive as now. So basically what I'm saying is that Aramax might have said, all right, you're doing 1,000 parcels through Sendle a month, we're going to charge you $1 a parcel.
Yeah.
Now they might be only doing 350, so that $1 jumps to $3.50. So now they surpassed Australia Post in comparable price. No one's going to use them.
Their biggest downfall is the time it takes to ship, because if it wasn't for that, if they are competitive in prices with Australia Post, I would probably use them over Australia Post just from the fact that they'll pick it up from my house. Like they'll pick it up from wherever I'm selling from. And if they had similar shipping time and it was as reliable, I'd probably do that.
I mean, you can get that through My Post Business at a cost, but I get what you're saying. Like the convenience of having someone rock up to your door that doesn't, charge you extra for doing that. I mean, that's pretty unique to that platform. So, it'll be interesting to see what does happen. And I think you're right, Octo, in that if they don't have that buying power, then prices will probably increase. I mean, if you can't fill a truck because there isn't a truck to fill, or it's going to take longer to fill that truck, then things are going to change.
That's right. So realistically, and what happens when it by no means is it a competitor to Australia Post, but we go back to it being a sole monopoly of Australia Post running the postal system, and price increases will just happen. Maybe they haven't got Sendle to compare against, or to basically give an option B. So their 5% rate charges go potentially up to 10% a year, all these different things. So there, like you're saying, there is there are flow-on effects to these things. And and like I said before, is that I probably overplayed the size of Poshmark, not knowing too much about it, thinking that I may have done it. But these are things that like I said, that it all falls into a plan B, is that people just assume that, all right, if eBay falls over, bugger, I'm stuffed. But what happens if, like a small, Depop and, Poshmark fall over and they primarily use Sendle, and, eBay might turn around and say, well, we're not using Sendle anymore because it's not competitive. And, we've got lots of complaints. So their contract expires on a certain date, they don't renew, and then Sendle's really goes back to, trying to, back to the dark ages from perspective. But, I've...
No, you go. Okay, sorry.
I was going to say that I've probably used Sendle probably twice or three times since its inception, because I used to have the pickup feature, and one of my parcels in Canberra, the Australia's capital, it was sitting on my doorstep for 6 nights when they were going to have like a next day pickup because the courier didn't. So I got to the point where I'd actually bring it back in at night time so I didn't get pinched. Put it out the next day. And I reached out to Sendle, and their solution was to ban that courier from picking up my parcels. So I got, Aramax was banned from my account, so I went to Couriers Please. I don't know what they're like now, but that was their stance. And I don't know what it is like now, and I'd be quite curious to see if anyone's in the comment sections below with your experience with Sendle, or your experiences with Poshmark closing down. But that if this is the state of the affairs, and like you're saying, Blake, is it takes 3 or 4 weeks longer to get there, and becomes more competitive.
Yeah, that's right. And it's so easy for us to sit here and just be like, oh yeah, Poshmark's shut down, just another platform gone. But when you really break it down into all the sections like we are now, it actually does affect much more than just one platform closing down. It's not just, oh yeah, it's fine, all resellers will just go to Depop, because people will have lost jobs. Couriers are going to be out of work too. It's quite a big deal.
Yeah, like Brad was saying, it could be potentially a good time to source product, because everyone's trying to flood the market, and the prices are inadvertently drop. But Q4 is probably not the best time to flood the market, because that's another thing that people don't take into consideration. All these people flooding it with used jeans or whatever the products it is. It probably doesn't affect me, because I'm not really a big clothing seller, and I'm not too sure what Brad's summer dress collection's like, but.
My personal or
your personal one. Yeah. Well, we've already seen that video last Halloween of your dress up, mate. So
I don't think that's coming to a screen this year, I can tell you.
It's still burnt in these painted eyes. I wish I could blink sometimes, but I couldn't get away from that. But no, but like you're saying, is that that people become more desperate, because, like you're saying, Blake, because they're out of jobs and all those different things, and it won't have a massive flow-on effect. I'm not saying that it will bring the economy to a halt, but these are the things that people don't think about. That like Poshmark closing with 4 or 5 days notice, is that people don't have that time to to go to the local market stalls or to liquidate their stock from that perspective. And the flow on effect from from couriers and all those different things. So
in a way, I kind of feel like obviously it's not, but one positive you can take away from it is that it is a good learning experience, and it's a good, I guess, thinking exercise to think, what if eBay did shut down? What am I going to do? Like, it helps you put more plans and more thoughts into thinking, what is life after eBay, or what is, what am I going to do if something like that happens? Even something as simple as, what if the supplier that I use shuts down and they're no longer able to supply me with stock? Like, there's so many different things that it actually has brought to my attention. And I feel like it's actually been a good thing for me and my business to be able to think about these things.
It's always good to reassess and work out, like, worst case scenario, what am I going to do? Because I mean, we're playing in someone else's sandpit essentially, and that's the same with eBay fees. It's the same with promoted listing fees. Like, they can all change and fluctuate with the market. It only takes eBay to go tomorrow, well, actually, we want to pay our shareholders more, so fees are going to be 20% flat across the board before promoted. So then your whole sourcing model and buying model has to change to adjust that market. So it's not only just that, like, Poshmark shut down. It's a good opportunity for us to go, all right, as a business, if you're looking at your business as eBay as your business or a side hustle, whatever you want to do, what do I need to do to secure my future? So am I changing what I'm buying because now I don't have that market that I was selling on before in Poshmark? Or am I trying to go harder in certain categories because now my sole focus is Depop or eBay? Like, it's a good opportunity to reflect and change what you're doing to adjust to a market change. So it's a lot there.
Yeah, and it's a lot to unpack, and you're right. And I think I'm probably closer to that 90% figure that people don't have a plan B, and that if anything, I hope that they watch this video if they're still watching it at the hour mark, regardless if they're in Australia or international, is that work out what you would do in that situation. That and it's the same thing, because people go, "Oh, I'll just create my own website, my Shopify account or something like that." Is that, but you have to pay for, like Brad, yourself, is that you don't get any traffic. Like, it's very hard to attract those. You have to do Google SEO, pay for Google advertising, all these different flow and effects from that perspective. Is that, and and you're right with the fees from an eBay perspective. It's now that Poshmark has gone down, potentially they could up their fees because they got no competitor in that space. They might make the beauty clothing. Please do it.
Stop making suggestions, Octo.
I'll take a cut, eBay, 5%. You can increase it as much as you like. Women's clothing, go through the roof. But these are the things, and quite possibly, like you're saying, the promoted fees now is that, if everyone else starts flooding, eBay with women's clothing or whatever clothing they're bringing across from Poshmark, that, and how desperate they are, like what Blake was saying, was that the promoted fee is going to go from what the suggested rate of 16% up to 33% or 34% or something along the lines of that. So these are things that you really need to be in tune with, and a lot of people won't give it a second thought, unfortunately. So.
And depending on your margins, them increasing fees by that amount, say like it was to 33%, that could just as easily put people out of business as Poshmark shutting down. Because if you're operating on a relatively tight margin based on the fact that it's going to be 15% plus promoted or whatever, and it suddenly changes to 20%, but you're only making a 5-10% profit margin depending on what you're selling, you're out of business. You're not going to make any money. So you got to either revamp and change everything, or you'll have to go get a job. Like, it's
It's the same for, like, sourcing as well. Like, if you're buying one type of item from one place or a couple places, it doesn't take long for multiple things to happen. A, they either close down, they adjust their pricing, or B, someone comes in and offers them a better price, and then all of a sudden you're cut out of that market. So I think being agile within whatever you do is important, because it doesn't take much for someone to work out where you're buying, like, your jeans from, or your video games, and then that market becomes more competitive, and then all of a sudden you're not able to continuing at. So I don't know. I think you just have to continue to move forward and not get overwhelmed by situations like this, where it's like there's a lot of gloom and doom, but there's also opportunities to make sure that you are better off in the future if something like this was to occur. I'm not saying if eBay shut tomorrow, any of us would be able to cope with that because that's our primary incomes. But if you can kind of have ways of, at least mitigating some of that risk in other areas, then you might get to that position and go, all right, well, okay, this is happening. What am I going to do now? And have a better, clearer plan rather than, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah. And yeah, like you're right there, because people just, I suppose they don't need to drop everything and do a plan B now. I think, from a gradual, maybe a short-term goal, I would say, probably you want to be looking at the next, 30 to 90 days, just, to start the scratchings of one, not obviously have a full-blown plan B one that you just, hide in a bunker and hope for the best. But you start wanting to look at these things and, start taking shape of all these different things. Do you reinvest some of your eBay sales into a side project? Bringing out a designer handbag line or something along the lines of that.
You're giving away my secrets.
Oh no, that's right. I was going to talk about the BDSM gear that we were talking about before, Brad. But I thought I'll slide away from that because I don't want to step on your toes. But like I was saying, is that you don't really want to reinvest 100% of your profits back into eBay stock. You probably want to maybe divert 10% or something along it into another side project that could potentially be another source of income. From all these different perspectives. So,
and just because you're a reseller, it doesn't mean that your plan B has to be in reselling. It could be getting a course qualification for the fact that like me, I was studying real estate for a while, so I could go and get a job as a real estate agent if I had to shut down my business for some reason. It could be something like that. It could be starting a YouTube channel and, just making a little bit of money off of that, even though you don't make much at all.
What's money? I haven't even got to the money part yet.
I wouldn't be relying on it for an income. I tell you.
Oh, no, I wouldn't be. But even just a lot of little things, or there are options outside of being a reseller. Real estate, anything
there's transferable skills as well, even within eBay. If you're really good at photography, maybe you can move into a photography type business. If you really understand SEO, then maybe you can move into SEO business. I know as resellers, we kind of put ourselves in this weird bucket of we don't really have much to give outside of what we do, but we actually do have skills. It's just they're very unique and you'd have to find new ways of using them. So
that's right. And I've said numerous times before, there's no shame in going back to the workforce. Like a 9 to 5. If you need to do that transition into the workforce and use eBay as your side funds until you build it up and go from that perspective as well, is that I find a lot of people don't talk about that. Is that they all romanticize becoming a full-time YouTuber or a full-time reseller and all those different things, but they don't really have that. It's almost letting the team down if they do move back into that thing where you really don't own anyone anything. So if it's what you need for your family unit or for your finances, do that.
I think you're right. There is a bit of a stigma that once you go full time, you have to make it work. And I mean, it's not an easy job, and especially if you want to do it at scale, you have to have a lot of contacts and a lot of people you feeding your store all the time to keep that money coming in. And I don't know too many eBay resellers that are making crazy money doing what they're doing. Even at higher levels of eBay, you have staff involved, you have warehouses involved, you have, all these things that contribute to the bottom line. So, I mean, I don't think there's any shame in anyone going, well, maybe I drop this back to a part-time gig, or maybe I stop it completely, because that is the good thing about what we do. You can pick it up and put it down whenever you need to. And like you said, if you've got family and you want more security in your job in this period of time, then of course, why would you not use eBay as a side hustle and a way of making that extra money to help pay those bills, and have something that maybe you work 3 to 4 days a week on that you're passionate about, and you get that steady income. Because I mean, eBay allows you to do a lot of things, but becoming a multi-millionaire is probably not one of them.
No.
Yeah, and absolutely.
Yeah, mate, sorry.
Here you go.
I was going to say, just thank you. It's my show after all. Oh,
exactly.
No,
I bow down to your time.
I was just going to say, and a throwback to last episode, it's just don't don't get to the point of desperation where you're having to pay, $1,000 for one-on-one coaching or something along to this to basically try and make things work. So, I personally would go back to the workforce before I got to the point where desperation that you'd need to, reach out to a YouTuber or, a Facebook group or something, or a Patreon group to try and resolve all your issues. So, but that's all I wanted to say, Blake. You can continue now.
Yeah, like I think, and for the majority of people, and this might be a bit controversial, but a lot of people probably are more suited to the workforce than, working for yourself. And because it takes a certain kind of person. And if you are doing, reselling, and you're like, you might jump into doing it full time too quick, but like doing it too much, like there isn't any shame, as you said, to go back to doing a normal job. Like, and just because you do that doesn't mean you're a failed reseller. Like, look at Hustle and Hooks. He's a great reseller, but he's going back because he got his dream job or whatever. There's nothing wrong with it. And you could do that. Like, if you're doing some study, or you're studying, or you're in university or something like that, you could use reselling as a bit of a side hustle, or you could do that instead of going and getting a part-time job. But then when you get the opportunity to get the job that you want, or you just decide that you'd rather be an employee, you get a stable check, go do that. Like, you don't have to, oh God, I'm committed, I have to do this for the next 80 years. It's not like that.
No. Well, being an 88-year-old octopus, I don't think I've got 80 years left in me. So, and that moustache, mate, I don't think that's got 8 days left in it before it comes off.
I don't know. Sticking around so far.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, the other half obviously likes it by the looks of it.
Yeah, but that's the reason I got
it. This episode's going into dark delving areas that we don't want to talk about. It's just one of those things. I suppose, we'll probably start wrapping up the episode because Blake obviously needs to comb his moustache. But I think, that it's just one of those things to have a plan B. If that plan B is, obviously moving from Poshmark to eBay, or eBay to, potentially looking at redesigning the internet, or reinvesting that money into something else you want to sell it to, or potentially going back to full-time employment, or doing Uber, all these different things to just to supplement that income until you work out your different things. But I think that there's no shame in any of that. That you just need to obviously have a bit of a realization, have a bit of a think, and reach out to the community. Like I've said numerous times, I'm more than happy for people to reach out to me through Instagram and say, hey, look, this is what I'm potentially doing. And if I have no idea, I'll just tell you that. I'm not going to lead you on and say, hey, look, this is what I think. Then all of a sudden you message me back 3 weeks later saying you're standing on a bridge because of the advice. But you just need to be mindful of like who you reach out to and what kind of advice you're getting back from.
I think that's very important. Is like, obviously the forward facing part of reselling is you see YouTubers, right? And you see people creating content around reselling, and it's very easy to just see what is presented in a video as the whole picture of reselling. And obviously you can't possibly film 24 hours a day of what you're doing and showing everyone, oh, well, I spent 3 hours sitting at a desk listing all day and then another 2 hours packaging all my items. Like, you can kind of condense that down into a quick little snippet, but you can't have I guess you could have a 24-hour stream if you really wanted to, but that's not what YouTube's designed to do. Like, I think for us, we've always tried to provide numbers and reality and figures around what we're doing, so people can understand that while we might be putting up, you make, I don't know, $600,000 last year, only 30% of that at the end of the day is going to end up in your pocket. And that's a lot of work to get that 30%. It's not like we go to work at
just
midday and we're out by 3 o'clock. Like, that's a full day's work. Plus, you're going sourcing on weekends, do garage sales. So what I'm trying to say is, like, don't just watch YouTube videos and go, oh, this is easy. This is something that I can just do in a couple of hours, because there's so much more work around it. And anyone that's sort of presenting it in a quick, get rich quick way is probably not giving you the full truth. And they're probably trying to use YouTube in ways that's going to help them make the money that they need to make to actually survive. So I think it's very important that people are aware that while YouTubers in most cases want to provide you with information and support, they can't possibly provide you with all the information that's going to help you understand if this is the right job for you.
100%.
Yeah, that's right.
Most resellers work more than your 38-hour week. Like,
of course.
it's I can't, like most people can't even remember the last time they actually had a proper full day off. Like it's, it's always something to do with the business, whether it is just sending out an offer, like
responding to offers and answering questions.
Exactly.
I mean, me and Jazz have been very conscious of our time since we moved into the warehouse, and we try to keep most of it Monday to Friday, but then we go out sourcing on Saturdays and enjoy garage sales. So, I mean, there's always these little things that add up in time that you're not really thinking that you're working, but you kind of are, just in a different way. So, yeah, it's not a start today and tomorrow you'll have $100,000 in your bank account. That takes a long time to build up that store. It takes a long time to build up the credibility and the knowledge to make that sell through happen quick enough that you can make enough money.
Yeah. No, it's good. No, it's definitely enlightening. You know, a lot of people don't realize and they don't think about that, unfortunately. But well, hopefully, you know, if they got this far, an hour and 10 minutes and 28 seconds in, that they can work it from there. But you know, really grateful for you popping on, Brad and Blake, for assisting in Grumpy Granny. She'll be happy to know that, you know, it takes two of you to make up one Grumpy Granny.
You can't replace the GG. She's
I've been trying. Yeah, many amount of illnesses and different things I've been throwing at her. She's quite resilient. She's hanging around for the long term. So yes, but thank you for both coming in. I think we'll wrap it up then, because obviously our retention rate's probably 2% by now. Anyway, well, but like we said before, is that, you know, by all means, you know, if you're feeling you want to reach out to someone, you know, reach out to the appropriate helplines if you're in a dire straits and all those different things. But you know, if it's just generalized eBay things or YouTube things, or you know, if you just want to reach out and talk to someone, reach out to me. I'm not going to talk on behalf of these other two gents, but you're more than welcome to reach out to me on Instagram and all those different things. I'll have a chat.
We're always here. That's what we do. We do it to help people for a lot of it too.
And I'm not obviously I won't lead you down the garden path. If I don't know, I'll just redirect you to Chris Furlong, because he's our dumping ground.
He's the analytical
John, that's right, or John the reseller. But like I said, we're not going to push you down the garden path and go from those different perspectives. But other than that, thank you very much for both of you coming on. If you're still here, please like and subscribe and all those different things. I know I don't do that very often. And tell us in the comment section all about your Poshmark experiences, or that doesn't. That's. I'll be quite curious. India and the UK, even the US. Obviously we have the US viewers. What do you think the state of Poshmark or YouTube is? Oh, sorry, eBay is over those international markets. And what is your plan B? I'd be quite curious to see if people actually thought that far ahead. You don't have to tell us everything. Yes, obviously we won't have to steal your information and go from there. But do you have a plan B? That's right. It makes it easier for us. But I'd be quite curious to say if you actually investigated a plan B and what kind of things what you've looked at so far. So, but other than that, thank you very much for coming on, boys, and we'll chat to you next week.
Thanks, Alan.
Thank you. See you later.